Feel the flight, kicking it with Alpha Flight, issue number 6 from January of 1984 here on 80s Comics. Alpha Flight, Snowblind. I suspect this was a very controversial comic book back in the day when it was new, and I'll show you why momentarily. This particular issue is all about Snowbird, the character Snowbird. And here's the creative team. John Byrne, once again, doing an absolutely phenomenal job on the writing and the artwork. So apparently, in Canada, you just get thrown in jail when you don't do your job well. So I guess whatever her real name is. What's her real name? It says it somewhere. Anyway, Blondie here. She gets tossed in jail for not doing her job well. That seems extreme, but then simultaneously, or I should say meanwhile, always a good comic book segue. Meanwhile, these drillers unearth that thing. That guy. Colomoc is free! Free after 1,000 years. So she senses this thing, and then she transforms from desk jockey to superhero and flies off to fight Colomoc. And we get a little side story here with Guardian. But check this out. So she basically, well, let's just say it starts to get weird real fast. Your foe is the land beast Tundra, Colomoc, and his power is long since fallen, but you have other older enemies. Look past my mortal guise, Colomoc. Look upon my true fires, and see now who it is. Sometimes it's hard to read these. And see now who it is you face. And boom! Where's the comic book? We got the sound effects. We got the writing. It's like he ran out of time this month. Apparently they're fighting in a snowstorm. And that's not to say the writing's bad. The writing's actually pretty interesting. I can just imagine, like, you get your paper copy in the mail, or you go to the newsstand. You know, this is back in the day when these actually cost some real money, even though it was probably like 60 cents when it was new. But 60 cents was a lot back in the day. Dizzy, the owl rises to the cliff top, tumbling into the drifting snow. Where? Where is this frickin' owl? Feathers flow, limbs shift and distort. How many people drew their own comic book when they got this? Like, I don't have a paper copy of this, but I feel like you could just do the whole thing with stick figures. And I don't know, maybe draw the owl flying or whatever and fighting with Look, something gets hit, but you don't know what it is. How much hate mail they get for this one back in the day? Eventually it ends. We get back to some real art. And the battle concludes. Snowbird obviously wins because, you know, she's in later issues, so we know that she wins. It's somewhat confusing, but I have to admit it's intriguing. I don't mind since I got it with Marvel Unlimited, but if I had paid like real money for the book back in the day, I'd have been featured in one of those columns at the end of the comic book, like, Dear Mr. Stan Lee, finish the damn book! In addition to the main story, like many of the other Alpha Flights, there's the continuing origins of Alpha Flight. So you get like the main story and then a bit of a short story here, the backstory of Shaman, that guy, Michael, two young men, who's apparently Canada's best doctor and a member of Alpha Flight. So we get some backstory on him. And in the next issue, there's some backstory on Snowbird, who I find to be the most interesting of all the characters, actually. I'm not really sure what her deal is. She seems like Captain Marvel of Alpha Flight. Like, she's super powerful. She should just be running the thing. No! Crash! I am a sucker for sound effects. It's true. See, next issue, we must leave for a while the origin of Shaman and look to an ancient chapter of an even more ancient conflict. And the next issue is super confusing. Wait till I show you that. Don't dare miss part 1 of the origin of Snowbird. What can I say? Not every issue of Alpha Flight is going to be my favorite issue of Alpha Flight, and though I like the cover a lot, it's actually a very nice cover. I'm a big fan of just minimalist cover designs in general. It's not my favorite Alpha Flight, but it still tells a story. The story of Alpha Flight, which is one of my favorite superhero series. I'm not usually a huge superhero fan. It's true. I don't particularly like those story arcs that run through like 25 different comic books, different series of comic books. I like to keep it all contained if possible. It's one of the reasons I like 80s comics so much. Like G.I. Joe is just G.I. Joe. They don't have to span it through like 17 issues of the Avengers and Thor. Though that would be interesting if they did. I will say that. I feel like Roadblock, Rock and Roll, and Thor would get along fabulously. Until then. Until that happens. Maybe that's what you can do here. Let me flip through the book real fast. You can draw your own adventures of Roadblock, Rock and Roll, and Thor hanging out. Control of myself! That's a thought balloon from Shipwreck.